15 years. For 15 years, I watched my entire family celebrate Thanksgiving together through Instagram posts. 27 people. Matching sweaters. My grandmother's lake house on Lake Charlevoix in Michigan. Hugs, laughter, turkey on the table, cousins I grew up with holding their babies. And me? I was sitting alone in my apartment in Columbus, refreshing my feed, wondering what I did that was so unforgivable that my own mother couldn't even send me a text. You know what's funny? I used to make excuses for them. Oh, the group chat must have glitched. Maybe they thought I was working. I'm sure someone meant to call me. 15 years of excuses. 15 years of telling myself that if I was just a little quieter, a little easier, a little less me, they'd finally remember I existed. They never did. Then last February, my grandmother passed away. And you want to know how I found out? A Facebook post. Not a phone call from my mother. Not a text from my sister Madison. A Facebook post from some cousin I barely knew, with a picture of Grandma Louise smiling in her garden and the caption, "Fly high, Grandma." That's how I learned the woman who raised me every summer was gone. I drove 4 hours to that funeral. 4 hours of crying so hard I had to pull over twice. And when I got there, the service had already started. Because nobody thought to tell me they moved the time up by 2 hours. I sat in the back row like a stranger at my own grandmother's funeral. My mother didn't even turn around. My sister glanced at me once, then looked away like I was some random woman who wandered into the wrong church. 3 weeks later, I got a phone call that changed everything. A lawyer named Charles Whitmore. He said my grandmother left specific instructions. He said don't tell anyone in your family about this call. He said she left me the lake house. The lake house. The one where my family gathered every Thanksgiving without me. The property my mother had been expecting to inherit for 30 years. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, wraparound porch, private dock, and about $2 million worth of waterfront real estate. I didn't tell a soul. For 9 months, I watched my family plan their annual Thanksgiving trip to Grandma's lake house like nothing had changed. Pinterest boards for table settings. Countdowns on Instagram stories. Group texts I was never added to. And this past Thanksgiving? When 27 relatives pulled up that long gravel driveway expecting their holiday vacation? I was standing at the front door. With the deed in my hand. And a sheriff's deputy at my side. What happened next exposed 15 years of lies, destroyed relationships I thought I wanted to save, and finally gave me the answer to the question I'd been asking my whole life. What did I do wrong? But here's the thing. The answer wasn't what I expected. And honestly, it changed everything I thought I knew about my mother, my family, and myself. So yeah. This is that story. The one where the forgotten daughter inherits everything. The one where 15 years of being treated like a ghost finally catches up to the people who made me feel invisible. And trust me, it gets so much messier than you're probably imagining right now. But here's what makes this channel different, and if you're new here, let me explain real quick. We don't just tell stories. Anybody can read a Reddit post out loud. What we do here is break down the why. The psychology. The patterns. Because here's what I've learned after years of sharing these stories, the people who hurt us. They're usually running the same playbook. Gaslighting. Scapegoating. Love bombing then discarding. Once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. And that's when you stop asking, what's wrong with me, and start asking, what's wrong with this situation? So if that sounds like something you need in your life, hit that subscribe button right now. Not for me. For you. For the next time you're questioning your own sanity because someone in your family is making you feel crazy. Now let me take you back to where it all really started. The phone call from Charles Whitmore. The moment I realized my grandmother saw me, really saw me, even when no one else did. So there I was. 3 weeks after burying a grandmother I didn't get to say goodbye to. 3 weeks of silence from my family. No, sorry you had to find out that way. No, we should have called you. Nothing. Just silence. Like I didn't exist. Like I'd never existed. I was sitting in my apartment in Columbus, this tiny one-bedroom I'd been renting for 6 years, eating leftover Chinese food and wondering if I should even bother sending my mother a sympathy card. That's where I was at emotionally. Debating whether the woman who gave birth to me deserved a Hallmark card. That's how broken things had gotten. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd been dodging calls from my credit card company about a late payment, and I figured it was them again. But something made me pick up. Pick up. Ms. Renee Sullivan? The voice was older. Professional. The kind of voice that sounds like it's wearing a three-piece suit. Speaking. My name is Charles Whitmore. I was your grandmother's attorney. I'm calling regarding her estate. My heart did this weird thing where it stopped and sped up at the same time. Her estate? Yes, ma'am. I need to meet with you privately. In person. And then he said the thing that made my blood run cold. Ms. Sullivan, it's very important that you don't mention this call to anyone in your family. Your grandmother was very specific about that. Don't tell your family. What kind of lawyer says that? What kind of grandmother puts that in her instructions? I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, running through every possibility. Did Grandma leave me some jewelry? An old photo album? Maybe a few $1,000s she'd hidden away? Never, not once, did I imagine what was actually coming. I drove to Ann Arbor the next morning. Charles Whitmore's office was in this beautiful old brick building downtown. The kind of place that smells like leather and old paper and decisions that change people's lives. He was older than I expected, mid-70s, silver hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored. Expensive-looking. And on the front, in my grandmother's shaky handwriting, my name. Just Renee. No last name. Like she knew exactly who would be reading it. Your grandmother asked me to give you this first, he said. Before we discuss any legal matters. She said you'd need to read it alone. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, handwritten, dated almost 2 years before she died. She'd written this while she was still healthy. Still sharp. Still herself. My dearest Renee. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But before I left, there was something I needed to make right. You are the only one who never asked me for anything. Not money. Not the house. Not a spot in my will. You visited me every Sunday, not because you wanted something, but because you wanted me. You called just to hear my voice. You sat with me when I was sick, when I was scared, when I was lonely. Your mother and sister came when they wanted something. You came because you loved me. So I'm leaving you everything. The lake house. The property. All of it. They will say I was confused. They will say you manipulated me. They will say I didn't know what I was doing. But Renee, I have never been clearer about anything in my entire life. Do with the house what you will. Keep it. Sell it. Burn it to the ground if that's what heals you. But promise me one thing. Stop being invisible. I looked up at Charles Whitmore. I couldn't see him clearly because my eyes were so full of tears. The lake house? I whispered. She left me the lake house? He nodded. The deed, the property, the contents, everything. She prepared this will 5 years ago and updated it twice since then, specifically to protect against contestation. Multiple witnesses. Cognitive evaluations documented. Video testimony. Miss Sullivan, your grandmother anticipated resistance. She knew your family would fight this. So she made this document absolutely ironclad. Before I left, he gave me one last thing. A small brass key on a simple keychain. Front door, he said. She wanted you to have the original. Said you'd understand why. I did understand. The original key. Not a copy. Not a spare. She wasn't just leaving me a house. She was leaving me a homecoming. But before I tell you about what I did with that key, I need you to understand what I was sitting on. I need you to understand what 15 years of being erased actually looks like. Because it didn't happen all at once. It was slow. Methodical. Death by 1,000 cuts. The first photo appeared on November 28, 2011. I was 19 years old, a sophomore at Ohio State, living in a cramped dorm room with a roommate who passive-aggressively labeled all her food in the mini fridge. I remember the exact moment because I was procrastinating on a sociology paper, scrolling through Facebook instead of writing about social stratification. Ironic, right? And there it was. Posted by my cousin Derek. A photo of my entire family gathered in Grandma Louise's living room at the lake house. My mother in the center, arm around Madison, both of them wearing matching burgundy sweaters. Aunts, uncles, cousins I'd grown up with. 23 people, laughing, holding wine glasses, a massive turkey on the table behind them. I counted. 23 people. I wasn't there. I stared at that photo for so long my phone screen went dark. Then I called my mother. Mom? I just saw Derek's photos from Thanksgiving. At Grandma's house? I was trying so hard to keep my voice steady. Trying so hard not to sound accusatory. Because even then, even at 19, I'd already learned that questioning my mother only made things worse. I didn't. Was there a gathering? Why wasn't I invited? She sighed. That sigh. If you've ever had a mother who makes you feel like an inconvenience just for existing, you know that sigh. It's not just air leaving lungs. It's a weapon. It says, why are you making this difficult, without using any words? Oh honey, we thought you were staying on campus for the break. Didn't I mention it? She hadn't. No, Mom. You didn't mention it. I came home. I was at the house. I made myself a turkey sandwich and watched the parade alone because I thought everyone was doing their own thing. Silence. Then, well, you should have said something. How was I supposed to know you wanted to come? Did you catch that? Because I didn't. Not then. I was 19 and I was so deep in the fog that I actually thought she had a point. Maybe I should have said something. Maybe I should have asked. Maybe it was my fault for assuming I'd be included in my own family's holiday. That was the first year. The second year, the excuse was different. We assumed you were working. You said you picked up shifts at the bookstore, remember? I had worked one shift. On the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. She knew that. The third year, the group text must not have gone through. You know how glitchy those things are. There was no group text. I asked Madison about it later, trying to sound casual, and she looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Group text. Mom just told everyone at Sunday dinner. Were you not there? I wasn't there because I hadn't been invited to Sunday dinner either. Year 4, you're always welcome, Renee. Why didn't you just come? You don't need a formal invitation to see your own family. That one really got me. Because it put all the blame on me. Made it my fault that I wasn't included. I should have known. I should have shown up. I should have fought for a seat at a table that apparently didn't have one for me. But here's the thing. If you have to fight to be included, you were never really welcome in the first place. By 23, I was tired of being forgotten. So I decided to do what she suggested. I decided to just show up. Thanksgiving 2015. I drove 6 hours from Columbus to Charlevoix without telling anyone. I thought maybe if I just appeared, they'd have to include me. They'd have to acknowledge me. They'd see me standing there and realize they'd made a mistake and pull me into a hug and say, "Oh my God, Renee, we're so sorry, of course you should be here." That's not what happened. I pulled up the long gravel driveway at around 2 p.m. Cars everywhere. Wisconsin plates, Illinois plates, Ohio plates. The whole family. I could hear music playing inside. Laughter. I could smell the turkey from the porch. I knocked. My mother opened the door. And I will never forget the look on her face as long as I live. Her expression went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, something that looked almost like fear, and then finally settling on this tight, controlled smile that didn't reach her eyes. Renee. What are you? How did you? She didn't say, come in. She didn't say, what a wonderful surprise. She said, what are you doing here, like I'd shown up to a stranger's house. Behind her, I heard Madison's voice. Loud. Clear. Not even trying to whisper. Did anyone actually invite her? 23 people. The room went dead silent. I could see them through the doorway, aunts and uncles frozen mid-conversation, cousins holding plates of appetizers, my grandmother sitting in her armchair by the fireplace looking small and confused. Every single one of them staring at me like I'd crashed a private party. Like I was an intruder. Like I didn't share their blood. My mother recovered quickly. She was always good at that, smoothing over the awkward moments. Of course you're welcome, honey. Come in, come in. Someone grab Renee a plate. But I saw the looks. I heard the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked past. I noticed how Madison made sure there was no empty seat at the main table, so I had to sit at the kids' table with my 8-year-old cousins. I felt my mother's hand on my elbow, guiding me away every time I tried to talk to Grandma Louise alone. I left the next morning before anyone else woke up. Drove 6 hours home in silence. Didn't even turn on the radio. Just me and my thoughts and the growing realization that I hadn't been forgotten all those years. I'd been excluded. There's a difference, and it matters. Forgetting is accidental. Exclusion is a choice. I never showed up uninvited again. For the next 8 years, I spent every Thanksgiving alone. Sometimes I'd order Thai food and watch movies. Sometimes I'd volunteer at a soup kitchen just to be around other humans. One year I adopted a cat specifically so I'd have someone to talk to over the long weekend. His name is Oliver. He's a very good listener. And every single year, the photos would appear. My family gathered around the table at the lake house. And every single year, I'd scroll through them like picking at a scab. 23 people. 25. 27 as babies were born and boyfriends became husbands. Never 28. Never me. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Renee, there has to be more to this story. Your mother couldn't have just decided to exclude you for no reason. What did you do? And honestly, I asked myself that question for 20 years. I replayed every interaction, every argument, every moment I might have said the wrong thing or embarrassed her. I drove myself crazy trying to find the thing I did. The original sin. The reason why my mother could look at me like I was a stranger at my own grandmother's funeral. But here's the truth I didn't learn until I was sitting in a therapist's office at 31 years old, sobbing so hard I went through an entire box of tissues. It wasn't about anything I did. It was about who I am. Or more specifically, whose daughter I am. To understand why my mother erased me, you have to understand James Sullivan. My biological father. The man I don't remember, even though I have his eyes. My mother Patricia met James when she was 18. He was 22, an art student at the University of Michigan, the kind of guy who wore paint-splattered jeans and quoted poetry and genuinely believed that beauty could save the world. He was talented. Like, actually talented. His paintings were these huge, emotional abstract pieces full of color and movement and feeling. My mother was a freshman. Business major. Practical, organized, the daughter of 2 accountants who'd planned her whole life out before she could walk. She was supposed to graduate, get a stable job, marry a stable man, have 2 kids by 30. Then she met James Sullivan in a coffee shop, and everything changed. They got married when my mother was 19. 19. She dropped out of college, moved into James's tiny apartment above a laundromat in Detroit, and genuinely believed that love was going to be enough. I was born a year later. March 1990. James was 24, Patricia was 20, and they were living in that same tiny apartment with a leaky ceiling and a radiator that only worked half the time. But back then, James couldn't sell a single piece. My mother was working double shifts as a waitress, coming home with aching feet, wondering how she was going to pay rent and buy diapers. She was 22 when it ended. November 3, 1994. James had finally gotten his big break. A real gallery showing, a collector who'd expressed interest, a write-up in the local paper. He was so excited when he left that morning. I was 4 years old. He kissed my mother goodbye and said, "This is it, Patty. Everything's about to change." He was right. Just not the way he meant. He was driving home that night when a delivery truck ran a red light. The driver had been on the road for 16 hours straight. Fell asleep at the wheel. James died on impact. He was 26 years old. He never saw the write-up in the paper. He never met the collector who ended up buying every painting at that showing. He was just gone. And here's what happened to my mother's grief. She couldn't process it. Grieving James would mean admitting she'd loved him. That those 5 years of struggle had been worth it. That her parents were wrong, that following her heart had been the right choice. But James was dead, and the dream was dead, and she was 22 years old with a 4-year-old daughter and nothing to show for it. So instead of grieving, she rewrote the story. In her mind, marrying James became her biggest mistake. The years she'd spent with him became a cautionary tale. And me? I became the evidence. Living, breathing proof of the choice she wanted to forget. Every time she looked at my face, she saw James. She saw the dreamer who left her with nothing. She saw the version of herself who'd been stupid enough to believe in something. She remarried when I was 6. Tom Richardson. A financial advisor with a 401k and absolutely zero artistic inclinations. Exactly what my mother thought she needed after the chaos of James. They had Madison 2 years later. My half-sister. The golden child. The do-over baby. The daughter who got to exist without being a reminder of anything. I have my father's eyes. Blue-gray, unusual, the kind of eyes people comment on. Wow, where did you get those eyes? I got them from a ghost. From a man my mother loved and lost and then decided to hate because hating him was easier than missing him. And every time she looked at me, she didn't see her daughter. She saw her biggest mistake, staring back at her. So there I was. February. Holding the deed to a $2 million lake house. And I had a choice to make. I could have called my mother right then. Could have screamed, "Guess what? The house is mine. The house you've been expecting your whole life. It's mine and there's nothing you can do about it." I didn't. Not because I'm some kind of saint. Trust me, I'm not. But somewhere between that lawyer's office and my apartment, I realized something important. Revenge that comes from rage? It feels good for about 5 minutes. Then it turns into a mess you have to clean up forever. But revenge that comes from patience? From strategy? That's different. That's the kind of revenge where you're not just reacting. You're responding. And there's a difference. So I waited. For 9 months, I held that secret. And I watched. I quietly took possession of the property in April. Drove up to Charlevoix on a Tuesday when I knew no one would be there. Walked through every room. Grandma's reading glasses were still on the nightstand. Her cardigan was draped over the kitchen chair like she'd just stepped out for a minute. I didn't move anything. I just existed in her space. Let myself feel her presence one last time. Then I locked the door with my key and drove home, and I watched my family plan their Thanksgiving. Oh, they planned. Madison started a Pinterest board in July. Lake House Thanksgiving 2024, with pins for tablescapes and appetizer recipes and cozy cabin aesthetics. My mother posted in the family group chat. The one I'd never been added to but could see through my cousin Derek's girlfriend, who thought the whole situation was messed up and kept me updated. Can't wait to host everyone at Mom's house one last time, my mother wrote. It's going to be emotional but beautiful. She would have wanted us all together. Mom's house. She called it Mom's house. Like she already owned it. Like the ink was dry on an inheritance that didn't exist. I screenshot that message. Saved it. I spent those 9 months getting my life in order. Paid off debt. Started therapy. Real therapy, twice a week, with a woman named Dr. Okonkwo who specialized in family trauma and didn't let me get away with minimizing anything. I also did something I'd never done before. I started saying no. No to the cousin who only called when she needed money. No to the job that expected me to work weekends without extra pay because I was part of the family. Funny how that word kept coming up. Family. Everyone wanted me to be family when it benefited them. Nobody wanted me to be family when it meant actually showing up. By November, I was ready. Not just legally, not just strategically, but emotionally. I'd spent 9 months building myself into someone who could stand in that doorway and not crumble. Thanksgiving was 4 days away. I called Charles Whitmore. I'm ready. What do I need to do? Legally? Nothing. It's your property. You can show up whenever you want. He paused. But Renee? If you're expecting a confrontation, you might want to have local law enforcement aware of the situation. Just in case things escalate. I called the Charlevoix County Sheriff's Office the next morning. Explained the situation. Asked if a deputy could be present when my family arrived. The dispatcher said, "Ma'am, we get calls like this more often than you'd think. Family property disputes around the holidays." She sighed. "I'll have someone there. Now before I tell you what happened on that porch, I need to stop and break something down. Because this isn't just a story about one messed up family. This is a pattern. And if you've ever felt crazy in your own family, if you've ever questioned your own memory, your own sanity, your own worth, I need you to hear this. What my mother did to me for 15 years. It has names. Psychological terms. Research behind it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with the big one. DARVO. It stands for deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's a manipulation tactic where the person doing harm flips the script to make you feel like the problem. Why didn't you just come? That's DARVO. You should have said something. That's DARVO. You don't need a formal invitation to see your own family. That's DARVO. Every single excuse my mother gave me was designed to put the blame on me. To make it my fault that I wasn't included. I should have known. I should have shown up. I should have fought for a seat at a table that apparently didn't want me there. The genius of DARVO is that it only works if you don't know it's happening. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every conversation with my mother suddenly looked different. Every "you should have said something" revealed itself for what it really was. A weapon disguised as advice. Then there's the concept of the identified patient or the scapegoat. In dysfunctional families, roles get assigned early. The golden child. The peacekeeper. The black sheep. And those roles stick, often before you're even old enough to understand what's happening. I was the scapegoat in my family. The problem child. The difficult one. The one who always had to make things about herself, even though I never asked for anything and spent my whole life trying to disappear into the walls. There's actual research on this. Family systems theory, developed by psychiatrist Murray Bowen, shows how dysfunctional families unconsciously assign roles to maintain their dysfunction. The scapegoat exists so the family has someone to blame. Someone to project their problems onto. Someone who can carry all the shame so nobody else has to look at themselves. That was my job. For 34 years. And then there's gaslighting. God, the gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone denies your lived reality so consistently that you start to question your own memory. Your own sanity. That didn't happen. You're being too sensitive. You're imagining things. You were always welcome, Renee. Do you know how many years I thought I was crazy? How many years I replayed every conversation, every memory, trying to figure out what was wrong with me? The answer was nothing. Nothing was wrong with me. I was just the person they decided would carry all the blame. Dr. Ramani Durvasula is a clinical psychologist who specializes in narcissistic family dynamics. I found her work during those 9 months of waiting, and something she said stuck with me. She talks about this cycle with toxic families. That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, it wasn't my fault. And if it was, you deserved it. That's the narcissistic playbook. And once you see it, you realize they're just running the same program over and over. Different words, same pattern. My mother wasn't creative in her cruelty. She was just consistent. And here's the last piece. Transferred grief. My mother couldn't grieve my father. Grieving him would mean admitting she loved him, that those years meant something. So she transferred all that pain onto me. Every time she looked at my face, she didn't see her daughter. She saw the reminder of a life she wanted to forget. Understanding all of this didn't excuse what she did. I want to be really clear about that. There's a difference between explanation and justification. Understanding why someone hurt you doesn't mean you have to forgive them. It doesn't mean you have to let them back in. It just means you stop carrying the weight of a question that was never yours to answer. What did I do wrong? Nothing. I did nothing wrong. I was just born with the wrong man's eyes. November 27, 2024. The day before Thanksgiving. I woke up at 5 a.m. Didn't need an alarm. My body knew what day it was. I'd driven up to Charlevoix the night before, checked into a little motel about 15 minutes from the lake house. Couldn't sleep more than a few hours. Just lay there in the dark, running through scenarios in my head. By 9 a.m., I was parked in Grandma's driveway. My driveway. I still had to remind myself of that. November in Michigan is gray and cold. The lake was this flat silver color that looked like it couldn't decide if it wanted to freeze. The trees were bare. The porch swing was still, covered in frost. I thought about all the Thanksgivings I'd missed in this place. All the photos I'd scrolled through. All the laughter I'd imagined happening behind these walls while I sat alone, wondering what was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. I knew that now. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. Deputy Marcus Webb arrived at 10:45. Younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, calm demeanor. Miss Sullivan? You're the property owner, correct? Yes, sir. Since February. I have the deed if you need to see it. He reviewed everything. Handed it back. Looks like everything's in order. I'll stay in my vehicle until they arrive. If you need me, just wave. Thank you. I really hope I'm overreacting. He gave me a look. Not unkind, but knowing. In my experience, ma'am, property and family don't usually mix peacefully. Especially around the holidays. The first car pulled up at 11:47 a.m. My mother. Of course she was first. She always had to be first. First to arrive, first to take charge, first to claim the best bedroom. She was driving her silver Lexus, Tom in the passenger seat scrolling through his phone like always. I watched from the living room window as she parked, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, and stepped out with the confidence of a woman who believed she owned the world. She was carrying a grocery bag. Probably ingredients for her famous green bean casserole. The one everyone complimented even though it came straight from a Campbell's soup recipe. She walked up to the front door. I heard her heels on the porch steps. Click, click, click. Watched the doorknob turn. It didn't open. Because I'd locked it. She tried again. Jiggled it. Frowned. Then she knocked. 3 sharp raps, impatient. I took a breath. And I opened the door. For a moment, she didn't even recognize me. I watched her face cycle through confusion, then recognition hit. Her expression. I wish I could describe it properly. It was like watching a computer crash in real time. Total system failure. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Renee? What are you? How did you get in here? I smiled. Not a mean smile. Not a triumphant smile. Just calm. Steady. Hi, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving. I don't understand. Did someone give you a key? This is my mother's house. Actually, I said, it's my house. The words hung in the cold November air. What? Grandma left it to me. The house, the property, everything. It's been mine since February. My mother laughed. That dismissive little chuckle she did whenever someone said something she found ridiculous. No, that's not right. Mom knew this house was supposed to stay in the family. It did stay in the family. It stayed with me. Her face went red. Then white. Then a shade I'd never seen before. You're lying. I'm not. I have the deed. I have the will. I have a letter in Grandma's own handwriting explaining exactly why she made this decision. That's when the second car pulled up. Madison's white Range Rover. Then Uncle Richard's Suburban. Then more cousins, more cars, more people streaming out of vehicles with suitcases and slow cookers and bottles of wine. 27 people. I counted. One by one, they stopped in their tracks as they saw me standing in the doorway. Madison pushed through the crowd. Mom? What's going on? Why aren't we going inside? She saw me. Her face did the same crash and reboot. What the hell is Esichi doing here? Apparently, my mother said, her voice shaking, your grandmother left Renee the house. The silence was deafening. 27 people, standing in a gravel driveway, realizing that the vacation they'd been planning for months had just evaporated. Madison recovered first. That's insane. Grandma would never. She turned to me. What did you do? Did you manipulate her? She had dementia at the end, everyone knows that. She didn't have dementia, I said calmly. She had cognitive evaluations every 6 months for 5 years. All documented. All witnessed. The will is ironclad. Behind me, Deputy Webb stepped out of his car. Madison's eyes went wide. You called the cops? On your own family? I called a deputy to keep the peace. Based on your reaction, I'd say it was the right call. My mother's face went through something I can only describe as a transformation. Shock. Vulnerability. And then the mask came back. Renee. Her voice shifted. Softer. Controlled. Sweetheart, can we go inside and talk about this like adults? Like family? Like family. 15 years of exclusion, and suddenly we're family. There's no misunderstanding, Mom. The house is mine. Legally, officially, irrevocably mine. But that doesn't make sense. Mom knew how much this place meant to me. Why would she leave it to you? You barely visited. And there it was. The rewrite, already happening in real time. I visited every Sunday, I said. For 6 years. I drove 2 hours each way to sit with her, watch old movies, bring her soup when she was sick. Where were you? I was busy. I have a life, Renee. I couldn't just drop everything. To visit your dying mother? She flinched. Actually flinched. Then came the tears. And look, I'm not saying they weren't real tears. But the timing was convenient. I can't believe you're doing this to me, she whispered. After everything I've been through. Losing my mother, grieving, trying to hold this family together. 10 years ago? 5 years ago? This would have worked. I would have crumbled. I would have apologized. I would have handed over whatever she wanted just to make the guilt stop. But I'd spent 9 months in therapy learning about this exact moment. Learning that guilt is a tool. That tears can be weapons. That, "How could you do this to me," is a magic phrase designed to flip the script and make the victim the villain. I'm not doing anything to you, Mom. I'm standing in my own home. You're the one who showed up expecting to stay in a property you don't own. But this is Thanksgiving. We've been coming here for 20 years. The whole family. The whole family minus one, I said. She blinked. What? 20 years of Thanksgivings. I was invited to exactly none of them. Well, I tilted my head. I guess I'm invited now. Since I own the place. Her face hardened. So that's what this is about? You're still upset about that? She threw her hands up. You were always welcome, Renee. You isolated yourself because you wanted to play the victim, and now you're using your grandmother's death to punish us for some imaginary slight. Imaginary. 15 years of being excluded. Imaginary. Finding out my grandmother died through a Facebook post. Imaginary. Did anyone actually invite her? Imaginary. It's not imaginary, Mom. I pulled out my phone. I have screenshots. Every Thanksgiving post from the last 8 years. Everyone tagged except me. I have the email I sent you in 2019 begging to be included, and your response telling me to stop making everything about yourself. I looked up at her. Would you like me to read it out loud? Her face went pale. You saved all of that? I saved everything. Because I knew this moment would come. And I knew you'd try to tell me it never happened. Madison grabbed her mother's arm. We're going to contest the will. First thing Monday morning. And when they find out Grandma wasn't mentally competent. Contest it if you want, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. I have documentation going back 5 years. Cognitive evaluations. Witness statements. Video testimony. You'll spend a fortune on legal fees and you'll lose. My mother's mask cracked enough for me to see the rage underneath. You're going to regret this. I'm going to give you one chance. Let us into this house, and we can spend Thanksgiving as a family. Or you will lose us. All of us. Forever. No more family. No more holidays. You'll be completely alone. The ultimatum. The nuclear option. Here's the thing about ultimatums from people who've already abandoned you. They don't hit the way they're supposed to. Mom, you've been excluding me for 15 years. You didn't tell me Grandma died. You didn't tell me the funeral time changed. I've spent every Thanksgiving since I was 19 either alone or with strangers. I shrugged. When you threaten me with no more family, what exactly am I losing? I'm losing people who forgot I existed until I had something they wanted. I'm losing holidays I was never invited to. I'm losing a mother who looks at me and sees her biggest regret staring back at her. I'll survive. The silence was absolute. You're going to regret this, she said quietly. For the rest of your life. Maybe. But I don't think so. I stepped back. Placed my hand on the door. This is private property. You weren't invited. You have 10 minutes to leave before Deputy Webb escorts you out. Madison grabbed our mother's arm. Mom. Let's go. She's not worth it. Not worth it. 34 years of being her sister, and I wasn't worth a single Thanksgiving invitation. Slowly, the crowd began to turn. My mother was the last to leave the porch. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you, she said. No, I replied. She wouldn't. She wrote me a letter, remember? I know exactly how she felt. One by one, the cars pulled out. 27 people, leaving with nothing but their luggage and their anger. I stood in the doorway and watched until the last taillights disappeared. Then I closed the door. Locked it. And for the first time in 15 years, I spent Thanksgiving at my grandmother's lake house. My house. The first text came 17 minutes after the last car left. I was still standing in the living room, shaking. The adrenaline that had been holding me together was starting to wear off. I sat down on Grandma's old couch and just breathed. Then my phone buzzed. "Madison, you're going to regret this for the rest of your pathetic life. We're contesting the will first thing Monday morning. Enjoy your little power trip while it lasts." I screenshot it. Saved it to the folder. The next few days were a lot. Texts, voicemails, emails. Some from numbers I didn't even recognize. Relatives coming out of the woodwork to tell me what a terrible person I was. Aunt Donna left me a 3-minute voicemail about how I'd torn the family apart and disrespected my grandmother's memory. The same Aunt Donna who hadn't visited Grandma once in the last 2 years of her life. Uncle Richard sent an email explaining that my actions had caused irreparable harm to the family unit. He signed it, "Regards, Richard." Regards. Like we were colleagues who'd had a disagreement about quarterly reports. But here's what I noticed. Every single message had one thing in common. Not a single one said, "I'm sorry you were excluded." Not one person acknowledged that maybe 15 years of being left out might have played a role in how this went down. It was all about what I did to them. How I ruined their holiday. How I hurt their feelings. Their family. Not mine. Theirs. My mother called 7 times that first week. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that cycled through every tactic. Voicemail 1, rage. "I cannot believe you did this. You have destroyed this family." Voicemail 2, guilt. "I'm your mother. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Voicemail 3, bargaining. "Maybe we can work something out. You keep the house, but let us use it for holidays." Voicemail 4, more rage. "You're just like your father. Selfish. Delusional. He ruined my life and now you're finishing the job." That one stung. Not because she compared me to my father. But because even now, she still couldn't see him as anything other than a mistake. A man who loved her, who loved me, who died too young. And she could only describe him as someone who ruined her life. The lawsuit came 10 days later. Certified letter. Contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished mental capacity. I called Charles Whitmore. They filed. I saw. I've already sent our response. The cognitive evaluations, the video testimony, everything your grandmother prepared. He paused. "Renee, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've never seen a will this well protected. Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing." 53 days later, the lawsuit was withdrawn. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. But the social fallout took longer. My mother launched a full campaign. Called every relative, every family friend. Told them her version. That I'd manipulated Grandma. That I'd stolen the house. Some people believed her. I lost cousins I'd grown up with. But here's the thing about smear campaigns. They don't work on everyone. About 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a message from Aunt Dorothy. My dad's sister. "Renee. I heard what happened. I just want you to know, I believe you. I always knew how Patricia treated you. I should have said something years ago. I'm sorry I didn't." She wasn't the only one. Derek's girlfriend said she thought what I did was badass. A younger cousin sent me a DM saying she'd always felt like an outsider too and was proud of me. Small moments. Unexpected connections. People I'd written off surprising me with kindness. When you shake a tree, you find out what's actually attached to the branches, and what was just sitting there waiting to fall. Here's something nobody tells you about cutting off toxic family members. It's not a straight line to happiness. It's not like you set a boundary on Tuesday and wake up healed on Wednesday. There's grief involved. Real grief. Because you're not just losing the people who hurt you. You're losing the fantasy of who they could have been. The mother who might have loved you unconditionally. The sister who might have been your best friend. The family holidays that might have been warm and safe. You mourn the might have beens. And that's okay. That's part of it. The first few months were quiet. I spent a lot of time at the lake house. Walking along the shore in the mornings. Reading Grandma's old books. Sitting in her rocking chair on the porch, watching the lake freeze over. I cried a lot. More than I expected. Not for my mother or Madison. I cried for Grandma. For all the years I could have had with her if I'd known sooner how much she saw. I found her things everywhere. A grocery list in her handwriting stuck to the fridge. A half-finished crossword puzzle. A cardigan that still smelled like her perfume. I kept all of it. Dr. Okonkwo and I had a session in early January. I told her I felt lighter but also sad. Is that weird? To feel both at the same time? Not weird at all, she said. That's exactly what healing feels like. It's not the absence of pain. It's the presence of peace alongside it. The presence of peace alongside pain. I still think about that. By March, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to sell the lake house. I wasn't going to let it sit empty. And I wasn't going to let it become a monument to everything I'd lost. I was going to fill it with something new. I started small. Invited my friend Beth up for a weekend. She's the one who'd held me while I cried after that first Thanksgiving photo back in 2011. We drank wine on the porch. Watched terrible movies. Laughed until our stomachs hurt. When she left, she hugged me and said, "This place feels like you now. Not like a ghost. Like you." Then came Carmen and her girlfriend. Then Marcus, a colleague going through a divorce who mentioned he was dreading an upcoming anniversary because he had nowhere to go. "Come to the lake house," I told him. "I've got a spare room and zero expectations. Just don't be alone if you don't want to be." He looked at me like I'd offered him something precious. "You barely know me. I know what it's like to feel like you don't have anywhere to belong." That's enough. By summer, the lake house had become something I never expected. A gathering place. Not for 27 people who shared my blood and ignored my existence. But for 4 or 5 people at a time who actually wanted to be there. There's this quote I came across. You can't build a life on a table where your seat keeps disappearing. At some point, you have to build your own table. That's what I was doing. Building my own table. And here's the difference between my table and the one I'd spent 15 years trying to earn a seat at. My table wasn't about obligation. Nobody was there because they had to be. Everyone who sat at my table had chosen to be there. And I had chosen them. That's what family actually means, I think. Not blood. Not obligation. Choice. This past Thanksgiving, I hosted for the first time. Not 27 people. Just 5 of us. Aunt Dorothy arrived first, carrying a dish covered in foil. "Your grandmother's recipe," she said. "Green bean. The real one, not that Campbell's soup nonsense your mother always made." I laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange, laughing about my mother. But also kind of healing. Beth and Carmen came next, arms full of grocery bags because they'd insisted on bringing enough food to feed 12 people. Marcus arrived last, awkward and grateful, holding a store-bought pie. "I don't really cook," he admitted. "Neither did Grandma," Aunt Dorothy said. "That's why she married a man who did. You'll fit right in." We cooked together. Drank wine. Told stories. Aunt Dorothy shared memories of my dad I'd never heard. How he used to draw portraits of strangers at coffee shops and leave them as gifts. How he cried at every sad movie. How he told her, 3 days before I was born, that he hoped I'd get his ability to see the magic in ordinary things. I didn't know any of that. My mother had erased him so thoroughly that I'd never known who he really was. Now I was starting to. Dinner was chaotic and imperfect and wonderful. The turkey was slightly overcooked. Carmen spilled an entire glass of red wine on the tablecloth. My cat Fitz jumped on the counter twice and had to be physically removed from the vicinity of the mashed potatoes. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd ever had. After everyone went to bed, I stayed up. Walked through the quiet house, looking at the photos I'd started hanging. New ones, mixed in with Grandma's old ones. And Grandma. Always Grandma. Her photo on the mantel. I was straightening her frame when I noticed something behind it. A small envelope, tucked into the back. My hands went cold. I pulled it out. My name was written on the front, in her handwriting. And below it. To be opened on your first Thanksgiving as owner. She'd planned this. Even this. A letter waiting for me, hidden where only I would find it. I opened it carefully. My dearest Renee. If you're reading this, it means you did it. You stopped being invisible. You stood in that doorway and you didn't move. I wish I could have seen it. I bet you were magnificent. I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I'm sorry. I watched your mother push you out, year after year, and I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. I was wrong. And I will carry that regret wherever I am now. But Renee, I need you to hear this, none of it was your fault. Not one single moment. You were a child who deserved love, and you didn't get it. That failure belongs to the adults who should have protected you. Including me. You have your father's eyes. But you also have his heart. His ridiculous, stubborn, beautiful heart that keeps loving even when it has every reason to stop. You know what he told me once? A few weeks before you were born? He said, "Mom, I hope she gets my eyes. But more than that, I hope she gets her own voice. I hope she never lets anyone make her small. I think he'd be proud of you, sweetheart." I know I am. Living well is the best revenge, they say. But living true, living as the person you actually are, not the person others tried to make you, that's even better. Be true, Renee. Be loud. Take up space. You've earned it. I love you. I'm with you. And wherever you go from here, you won't go alone. Your Grandma Louise. I pressed the letter against my chest. Closed my eyes. Let the tears come. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Before I end this, I want to talk directly to you. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family. If you've ever been the one who got left out, gaslit, made to feel like the problem when you weren't. If you've ever had to question your own memory because someone kept telling you things didn't happen the way you remembered them. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not the problem. And you don't have to keep showing up for people who won't show up for you. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're protection. They're you deciding where your energy goes. They're you saying, I deserve better than this, and actually meaning it. It might mean losing people. It probably will. But here's the thing about losing people who never really saw you. The emptiness they leave behind isn't loss. It's space. Space for people who actually want to be there. Space for relationships built on choice instead of obligation. Space for you to stop shrinking and finally take up room in your own life. I don't know what happens next with my family. Maybe my mother will have some kind of awakening. Maybe Madison will show up one day, ready to have a real conversation. Maybe not. I can't control that. I can only control what I do. And what I'm doing is living. Fully. Loudly. In a lake house that belongs to me, surrounded by people who chose me. That's the ending my grandmother wanted for me. That's the ending I'm choosing for myself. Now here's what I want you to know about this channel. The stories I share here, they're real. I collect them from Reddit, Quora, online forums, with permission from the people who lived them. I change names and circumstances. I add some fiction to protect privacy. But the core of every story? That's real. And more importantly, I break them down. The psychology. The patterns. The manipulation tactics. Because I want you to recognize these things if they ever show up in your life. I want you to have the words for what's happening to you. I want you to know you're not alone. So if this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen, or angry, or hopeful, or just less alone, hit that subscribe button. We're building something here. A community of people who refuse to be gaslit. Who refuse to shrink. Who are building their own tables. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever had to set a boundary that cost you relationships but saved your sanity? I read every single comment. And more importantly, other people read them too. Your story might be the thing that helps someone else realize they're not crazy. Check out the other videos on this channel if you like this one. We've got stories about entitled in-laws, manipulative parents, and moments of sweet, satisfying karma that'll make you want to stand up and cheer. Take care of yourself. Protect your peace. And remember, you deserve a seat at a table that actually wants you there. I'll see you in the next one.